Hi, my name is Keric Morinaga. I am fourth generation Japanese American, and although I might look more like the incoming team, I sound more like the outgoing team. Just to give you, I want to thank you all for just this fantastic experience. I want to reiterate what both Natasha and Wendy said. So once in a lifetime experience, and I really appreciate it. To sort of give you some context, my brother honeymooned in Japan at the end of last year, so like October or November, and he came back from Japan. It was his first time to Japan. This was my first time to Japan as well. He came back and he said, Keric, he's like, I am nothing like the Japanese. They're so different from me. He came back from his honeymoon, from his trip, and he was on like a tour. So he was kind of like what I see as, he was on the outside looking in. And I came back from Japan with a completely different experience that my brother had. And we're so much alike, I can't even tell you. We're almost like twins. But I came back with the experience that I felt like, wow, I'm so much like the Japanese. And it was such a great experience for me to live in their homes and to be treated so well by Rotarians. The highest compliment that I got from Rotarians while I was there is, they said, Keric, you are Japanese at heart. And that really hit home for me. I really took that in the highest way. So I'm a yoga teacher, so my vocational experiences were all based around yoga in either gyms or in cultural centers. And my first yoga experience was a room full of women, 44 women and me. So yoga is slightly different in Japan. Now you would think, wow, 44 women and you, that sounds pretty good, right? Like, why would you be unhappy in that class? Well, A, I'm married, and B, the 44 women in the class were my mother's age. So it's like practicing 44 by my mother. And I had similar experiences in the other yoga classes. I think primarily it was because a lot of the classes were set up by Rotarians for me, so I was in particular classes during the middle of the day when people didn't have to work. I have a feeling that yoga, like the classes that I teach, actually exists in Japan. I just didn't get a chance to experience it. But it did give me a good idea of sort of what fitness was like in Japan and sort of how they're approaching physical fitness. And so my presentation, in addition to my vocational experiences, I'm going to talk about some cultural differences, and I chose to do this in a little top 10 format. So I have the top 10 things that you probably won't find in the Lonely Planet guidebook. So I carried the Lonely Planet guidebook with me the whole time, and I didn't see these things in the guidebook. So they're pretty short. With 5 minutes to speak today to encapsulate 30 days of being in Japan, it's like trying to summarize the Bible in one sentence. You can do it, but I'm going to leave out a lot of the details. So here's the top 10. Number 10, the Japanese are not obsessed with physical fitness like Americans. The only time you see people running is if they're running to catch the train, which is always on time, and if they're bicycling to get to work, not to prepare for that weekend race. Number 9, the Japanese seem deeply spiritual to me, judging by the number of shrines and temples. Each city or community had its own shrine and temple, and they coexist peacefully together. There's really, if there are two sort of national religions, it's Shintoism and Buddhism, and they coexist together. You might have a Shinto wedding, and for funerals you go to the Buddhist temple. Alcohol, number 8. Alcohol is not limited to sporting events, bars, and sipping fine wine. Alcohol seems to be consumed at every meal, and we consume alcohol at every meal. Here's the order for drinking alcohol in case you're curious. Beer first, then sake, then wine, then soju, which is like Japanese vodka. It's distilled from grain. And then whiskey. I discovered that if you add tequila onto that, it doesn't make a good combination. Number 7. I didn't see this in any of the Lonely Planet guidebooks. In Japan, toilets are elevated to a high art. Every toilet seat had at least a half a dozen buttons on it. The buttons were to warm the seat, you could control the temperature of the seat. The buttons were to refresh yourself. You could control the stream, or you could change it to a spray. You could control the temperature of the water. You could even dry yourself with one of the buttons. And we're not talking about just in fancy homes. We're talking about, like, at the mall, you still had seat warmers in the toilet seats. Number 6. In the US, it seems like we've come a long way in going green. I could go on and on about how recycling is different in Japan, but in my community, we just have sort of recyclables and trash, right? That's how we sort of distribute the different things for the trash companies that come around. In Japan, anywhere between 7 and 10 different types of recyclables. So you have to separate your glass from your plastic, from your tin, from your aluminum, from your cardboard and your paper, and the list goes on. So they're a little bit ahead of us when it comes to recycling, and the one thing that I heard from the Japanese is that they feel like they're behind the Europeans. So that's coming up in 5 or 10 years for us, I suppose. Number 5, respect is not just a song by Aretha Franklin. Respect is something that the Japanese give to each other based on seniority, based on job titles, based on their positions in life. But I think that even deeper than that, there's just a general respect that they give to people, just for being human beings. And I really like that in Japan. It even extended to the way that they drive. They drive more courteously. They don't cut each other off. They're very patient when they drive. They have to be, because the country is so congested. Number 4, pictures. We literally took hundreds of pictures traveling in Japan. I felt like a Japanese tourist, and I guess in some ways I was. But the one thing that was different in all of the pictures that I took, we took lots of pictures of our host families, and I don't have any pictures of my host family, mother and father, standing together, arm in arm, smiling. So the difference is that, in general, they don't show a lot of teeth. Like Americans, we're so toothy when we smile, right? They don't show a lot of teeth when they take pictures, and there's not a lot of physical display of affection, at least in the photographs. So sometimes I would have a host family that they would smile, but then they wouldn't touch, or sometimes they would touch, but they wouldn't smile. So the pictures are just a little bit different, and I thought that was interesting, seeing how I usually think of Japanese as being camera happy, like myself. Number 3, space is at a premium in Japan. They save space wherever they can. This means that houses, apartments, condos are much smaller than ours. We went to one home party while we were in Japan. So things like barbecues, backyard barbecues, don't really exist. Home parties don't really exist. There's just not enough space to do that kind of thing. We were at the home of a very rich Rotarian, and we had the opportunity to have one home party, which was very special for all of us. Other ways they save spaces, even things like parking spaces. I had one host family that they had one parking space, but they fit 3 cars in the one parking space because the parking spaces there was an elevator that actually raised your cars up, and you drove the car in, and then the elevator went down, and then 2 cars fit underneath in the elevator while 1 car was parked on top. So space is being conserved wherever they can. I think I read online that per square kilometer, there's 31 people per square kilometer, and in the US it's something like 13 people per square kilometer. So it gives you the idea, kind of a rough idea of what the density is like. Number 2, there's no such thing as fashionably late in Japan. There's no such thing really as early either. We did a lot of hurrying up to wait, and waiting was part of the plan. So we would rush to get up in the morning and get to where we were going to go, and if we were 10 minutes early, we just had to wait for everyone else to get there. I think that being on time really goes back to the respect, number 5. It's just a basic respect for others, for their time, for their efforts. And number 1, this one was definitely not in the Lonely Planet Guidebook. If Japanese Rotarians were to decide on the future of American politics, Obama would be the next president of the United States, for sure. Thank you.